guys, it's Sam, and this is Top 5 Wednesday. If you are new to Top 5 Wednesday, I will leave a link to the Goodreads group down below for topics. This week's topic is our favorite villains, and this is a topic that has been done before in the past in Top 5 Wednesday, like a few years ago, and I thought it was about time to bring it back around because there's always new villains to talk about. Villains are my favorite thing to talk about, and I just felt like it was time for us to discuss it again. I didn't actually go back and check my previous video on villains. I think I participated when we talked about villains the first time around. I'm not actually sure. But I didn't go back and check mine or any other villain discussions that I've had because I just want to be honest. I'm not gonna like create new villains that I love the most. Like, these are the villains I love the most that popped in my head, and that's that. Number 5 is a classic for me, and that is Spike and Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite TV shows, and I actually have a collab coming up soon on this channel with some other BookTube friends talking about Buffy, so maybe they refresh my mind. But Spike and Drew are the main big bad villains on season 2 Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they're my absolute favorite because they're those kinds of villains that they are really bad, and one of them is a little bit crazy, but they kind of integrate themselves as like side characters' friends as like the series continues, and that's like my favorite kind of dynamic, and I just love them. And then we also have Angelus kind of tagged onto them at the end, who is another one of my favorite villains because there's just this whole like juxtaposition and this just all this talk in the mythology of Buffy the Vampire Slayer about like vampires and their souls and like how evil they can be and all this great, wonderful, juicy stuff. So Spike and Drew are my absolute favorite villains in the entire series. I do have a soft spot for like the Mayor and even the Master in the first season, but just season 2 is like my quintessential season, and they are the villains in that season, and I just love them dearly. Number 4 is present in a lot of my favorite retellings, and that is Zeus from basically any Hades and Persephone retelling. And the reason that I love seeing Zeus as a villain is because he is, and because I think I'm still bitter from like Disney Hercules, even though I didn't know at the time, making Zeus like a good guy, because Zeus is the ultimate fuckboy. Zeus is such a frat boy, like, misogynistic, gross piece of shit. And the fact that he gets dragged in basically every single Hades Persephone retelling is beautiful to me. So, although I don't necessarily like him in a, like, oh, I love to hate him kind of character, like, I love seeing him get dragged. And so I love seeing him pop up as villains in Hades Persephone retellings because he's just awful. Like, almost everything in Greek mythology is caused by Zeus doing something shitty. Like, he's just, the ripple effect that Zeus has on myths, especially with bad things happening to women, is just like, ugh, I hate you. So, I just like seeing him pop up and get dragged. So, is he necessarily a favorite villain? Yes and no. Because I like seeing how despicable retellings make him, because like I said, for the longest time growing up I was told like, oh, Zeus, he's like basically Jesus, you know, like he's so great. And then I started actually knowing about how Zeus was in mythology, and I'm like, no he's not, no he's not, he's awful. Number 3 are the antagonists in the Night Circus, and I'm gonna say antagonists because the Night Circus is really interesting for a lot of reasons, which is why I love it. But the whole concept of villainy in the Night Circus is interesting because there is that gray area with this. The villains of the story, it's kind of like, who are the villains really? And the villains have kind of lost a sense of their humanity, and they don't even really know that what they're doing is wrong. And that's really interesting. And they've lost their humanity, but they also hold on to shreds of it that make them very sympathetic and likable, even though they've put the characters in a situation that is causing horrible damage to so many people, and that they've been doing these kinds of things for years. It's such an interesting thing to look at and watch them, and you're like, I can't really hate them as villains. They cause so much damage, and like I said, they're more like antagonists. They cause so much damage to the characters around them, but they don't even know really what they're doing. And you kind of feel bad for them in that way, and I find that really interesting. Number 2 is another TV show, vampire-based TV show, and that is Katherine Pierce from The Vampire Diaries. I love Katherine Pierce. I have been a Katherine Pierce stan since the very beginning. When she made her appearance on a season finale and chopped off someone's fingers, like, she's so great. Like, there have been moments where I've been like, would Katherine Pierce wear this? And I've bought an article of clothing because I felt like Katherine Pierce would wear it. Like, it's kind of bad, how much I love her, but I love how much of a survivor she is. I love how brutal and savage she can be. I love how conniving she can be, but also so human, and that she has these moments of weakness where she shows pieces of her humanity even though she claims that she doesn't have any left, and you know, like, she's just this like badass bitch, but she has these moments of just wonderful, like, just clarity, and I just adore her. Everything about her. She is one of my favorite villains to have ever graced TV screens. Nothing compares to Katherine Pierce for me. And number one was probably obvious to all of you when you clicked on this video, but the Darkling from the Grisha trilogy. The Darkling, honestly, I feel will stand the test of time with me as my favorite villain of all time because of the crazy dynamic that he and Alina have, and this whole, everything about it, and how tied in he is to the story, and like calls to like, and all of this wonderfulness with him as a villain, and a villain who is so sympathetic even though he's evil. He does horrible, horrible things that are unforgivable, but yet he is one of the most beloved characters in young adult fiction. That just speaks to how incredibly well written he is, and we can go into discussions about like internalized misogyny and all this stuff about like why he is so beloved and he gets away with all this stuff and blah blah blah. Whatever. All of those things are true and are valid discussion points, but I think that you can't ignore his pull and how well written he is. Like, he's just such a complex villain, and there's plenty of people who don't really like the series or don't really even like the main character, but they're like, man, the Darkling though, that's a good villain. And he's just so sympathetic, and he has these moments of humanity, again, kind of like Katherine Pierce, where you're just like, I'm so attached to you, but you do horrible things and you like deserve to die. You're awful, but like, I love you. You know, like it's bad, but he's great, and I love to hate him. I also love to see him get beaten by Alina. Like, whenever Alina does something that he isn't expecting or like throws him off, because he walks around thinking that he's like the greatest thing ever and that he's so smart and so wonderful. And whenever he is utterly destroyed by a 17-year-old girl, I rejoice. Like, that whole dynamic of like her being better than him and like her being more powerful than him ultimately is so cool, so wonderful, and I love everything about that dynamic, and just him as a character and her as a character, and their mirroring of each other and being similar but being very different. I could go on, but I'm not going to, because you guys already know how I feel about this character. I love him so much. He will forever be my small, tiny, trash child, trash husband, trash everything. I love him so much. So that is it for my favorite villains. Comment down below, let me know some of your favorite villains. And for this topic, I did say in the group that I didn't really want to see any Harry Potter characters, which is why you didn't see any on my list, so I also encourage you to not include any Harry Potter villains. Do some different ones, because it's more fun. We all know that Voldemort and Bellatrix and Umbridge are horrible and we love to hate them and whatever, but I would love to see some different villains that maybe we don't see mentioned as often. So comment down below and tell me some of those villains. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!